Here's the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask everyone to please remain standing for a moment of silence for Frank Reddick, who was the former clerk of the works for the Clinton Middle School and the father of Barbara Favreau, a Clinton Elementary School instructional assistant. Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the September 25th edition of the Clinton School Committee. I'd like to start with approval of the bills and entertain a motion to accept the bills at this time.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Thank you. And I assume we've had a chance to review the minutes from the meeting on September 11th. Can we take a motion to accept those minutes at this time?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. DeWalt. Second?
Second.
Mr. McIntyre. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We do not have a student representative
The
here.
elections took place, the student council took care of that.
Okay.
We have someone, but he had a cross-country meet up at Murdoch, so I think he needed a passport to go up there. He'll be back.
We're going to
Starting
recognize
next week. He
him
will
at
come
some
meet.
point tonight. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Great. The PTA. Hi.
Not much has changed since a couple weeks ago. We have our first meeting this Wednesday at 6:30 at the library at the Clinton Middle School. The Ghost and Goblins race is coming up in October, the 21st. You can register to volunteer, to run, to walk. They're also having some vendors if you want to sell anything that day. And it's at clintonroadrace.com. And from there, I believe it brings you to RaceWire to sign up for the 1 mile, I think it's a 1 mile walk and then a 5K for the run. And we meet every other month at the middle school, and we just encourage anyone and everyone to come join us.
And the date and time of your next meeting is?
When it'll be in November, probably towards the end. We'll have more information on that.
We'll report on that. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Special Needs Parent Advisory Council.
Hello.
Hey, Kelly.
Hi. We had our first meeting this past Wednesday. At the beginning of the school year, we usually meet in September at a different time than our regular time. We meet the first Wednesday of every month, but because of open houses and the craziness of the beginning of the school year, we adjust our first meeting accordingly, and we met this past Wednesday here at the elementary school. And we had Dr. Meyer come, and we had some new staff come, and everyone participated in our business part of the meeting. And then when we went to our family support, everyone that is part of the school system left, and then we continued our meeting for about another hour after everyone left. So our next meeting, and then every meeting thereafter, will be the first Wednesday of every month. And so that will be October 4th, I believe, Wednesday, October 4th. Sorry.
I think that's right.
Yes, October 4th. Everyone is always invited. We are looking to book some people to come in and talk all year through. A lot of times we have some of our specialists inside our own school system come in. We've had OT, PT, we've had speech and language come in and talk. We've had some specialized teachers come in and talk. We are looking forward to having possibly a fireman that's come in the past. He's from Leominster, and he helps parents get ready for if there's a fire or an emergency situation if you have a child with special needs, and some of the steps that you need to take in account in advance. And he also goes around to local fire stations and police stations and helps train them to look at kids that might not typically respond in an emergency situation as a typical child would, and how they use steps to help the children stay safe. And but we're also looking for other speakers, and so if anyone has any suggestions or anything, we're always open for that. Thank you.
Joan. Thanks for all the great work you do. The CTA. Okay. Do we have any public comment? As we've done the last several meetings, we can revisit that again if we need to. Next up on our agenda, we have recognitions of our AP scholars. Mr. Hastings, would you like to tee that up for us?
Yes, Mr. Pecky, if she could also come up too. Mr. Pecky, our guidance counselor. Mr. Pecky has been the advisor overseeing this program for several years. It's quite a long process each year for these students who qualify, meet the criteria. Lauren begins in spring as they choose their classes. They have to commit to the program, commit to the class. Then the summer assignments come, and then the intensity of an AP class is pretty impressive with seeing the results that we do have. And this year, there was a certain, how many students? Five, I'm sorry, in all that took AP classes. There was quite a few students who took all of them. Around 50 students. And there's different ways of being recognized as an AP scholar. Just something very foreign to me from my days in school, I'll tell you that. But AP scholar is, first of all, is the regular AP, if there's such a thing as an AP scholar. And he or she is granted to a student who receives a score of 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. As you know, the scores go from 1 to 5. And just of the 3 students who have been recognized as AP scholars, we have Hunter Burke, Troy Howlett, and J.P. Vieira. And among those are 14 different tests among those 3 students. Scores are usually 3s and 4s, so that's pretty impressive for those 3 AP scholars. And then there's also recognized this evening 2 AP scholars with distinction. And those are granted to students who receive an average score of at least 3.5 on all AP exams taken and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more of these exams. And our 2 students who are receiving AP scholars with distinction, one is still a senior in high school with us, Sam McGowan, and Shail Patel, who graduated this past year. So all these students, apart from Sam, have graduated and moved on, and Sam is still with us. Just an idea, I really was, I would love to tell you what their individual scores are, but I didn't want anything to seem uneven or anything like that. But just an idea of those 2 are AP scholars of distinction. We have students with, just one of the students, an AP Language Comp 5, AP Calculus 5, BC Calculus 5, Biology 4, and Physics 5. That's incredible. And one of the other students, 4, 4, 4, and 4. Pretty impressive. So that's really, it's a lot of hard work. It's very intense. And hopefully they take advantage, they're at the opportune time in college situations where they maybe not have to take one of these classes because of their scores. Lauren, she can follow up on, Lauren does all the work on this, and the percentages that we have are just, she does a great job, and it's a lot of work of keeping on that, so.
So I took over AP when I started here 10 years ago. I think one of the first tests was offered in 1996, according to Ms. Hamilton, that's what she tells me. But like Mr. Hastings said, we were proud we had 5 AP scholars this year. Some of the schools, Hunter Burke is at UMass Amherst now, Troy Howlett at WPI, JP is at Harvard, and Shail Patel is at RPI. And then I am Sam McGowan's counselor. I'm one of the counselors there, but we split the alphabet, so I'm lucky enough to have M through Z. And I have Sam this year, and he's got some pretty high aspirations, which we're really proud of all the kids, so.
And, you know, just for a small school, the amount of AP classes that we offer is we're very fortunate to be able to do that. And, you know, we're very grateful, and we honor these people, and they did a great job. The only hard part is they're not here tonight to receive this recognition, but, you know, we're very proud of it. And all those, and the teachers that have worked to be certified and licensed in AP, which is some time out of their summer vacation to do that, and that's a lot of hard work too. And the amount of time extra correcting and keeping up with that, it's hard work, but it's been successful, so we're very proud of it. So
Please
we
extend our thanks to the
Okay.
faculty involved and our congratulations to the kids.
That's great.
Do we recognize them with is there a certificate from the?
I was saying I could write a letter to them, letting them know that we recognize them this evening and thanking them for their hard work and the way they represented Clinton High School. And we can maybe send that off, even if it's their home addresses. I'm sure they'll get to them.
Great.
Good news. Thank you. So first, I'm remiss in not thanking Mr. Rulo and Mrs. Silvio for hosting us tonight. Our meetings have become so popular, we've decided to go out on tour. And tonight, we find ourselves in the Clinton Elementary School, the beautiful library of the Clinton Elementary School. And we have some presentations from Clinton Elementary and Clinton Middle School. And so we'll turn it over to Mr. Rulo.
So to begin with is I have Alyssa Piermarini and Megan Silvio here today, and they're going to be talking about foundations and about the wind block. So foundations began about a year ago with our kindergarten and our first grade. And we stepped into something brand new to us, and what we found an area of need that we had. And the teachers jumped into it with a lot of vigor and a lot of enthusiasm. From there, this particular year, we were going to get grade 2. We're going to work it up very slowly, and Dr. Meyer jumped in, and we are now having grade 3 also. So grade 2 is really implementing this year, and grade 3, the teachers are going to take their time, and they're going to learn about it and understand it, and they will fully implement it next year as those students in grade 2. So we believe that we're going to see a lot of changes in the years to come in that area of foundations. The wind block was brought to us when Dr. Meyer came in. He brought to us. It's an opportunity to work with kids who have all different types of abilities. We're trying to find something for that top 5% of our kids that sometimes we believe we missed. And the wind block allows us to work not only with every kid, so it stands for what is needed now. And that's going to be able to help us for students for enrichment and for students in need. So along the lines, I believe we're excited. Megan will talk a lot about the wind block and how we're going to roll that out. And we believe this whole year is going to be about taking our time, making sure we do it right, and then next year it comes across very well. So I'm going to start with Alyssa, and she's going to come up and talk a little bit about foundations. And then Meg's going to be with her, so I'll turn it over to these ladies, and they're the real engineers behind this whole thing.
Okay. So, my name is Alyssa Piermarini. I'm a grade 1 teacher here, but I'm also the ELA chairperson. This is my 3rd year serving as that, so I've kind of been on board with Mr. Rulo, Mrs. Silvio for the past couple of years, kind of trying to revamp the way we do the ELA, looking at the standards and our teaching. So just long story short, we sort of came about foundations because we were looking at DIVL scores and we were looking at assessments for years past, and we sort of were starting to see patterns of flatlining. So our kids were doing well, but we weren't really seeing big improvements from year to year. So we kind of stepped back and sort of said, well, what are we missing? Where do we think we can take what we have and make it better? So that kind of came about foundations. So we kind of felt like our phonics program, which is kind of learning letters and sounds and putting it all together, was sort of lacking with the reading program that we had. So we looked at other districts, we saw what they were doing, we looked at research, we kind of, Mr. Rulo sent me to a training with Wilson, and we sort of decided to slowly roll out foundations. So foundations, like I said, is through the Wilson Company. They've been around for a very, very long time. They're really well known in the field of reading. They have really intensive programs for kids that really, really struggle with reading, but Foundations is more of like a general curriculum type program that you would use with all students in just a mainstream classroom. So it provides instruction in the area of spelling, handwriting, letters, sounds, phonological awareness, which is those beginning skills for the little ones where they have to be able to take take sounds, and they have to be able to change them, manipulate them, put them together, take them apart, all that stuff that is indicative of becoming a future reader. So we at the Clinton Elementary School started out with Foundations last year in grades K and 1. It was suggested to us through the training that you kind of would want to roll out the program with the littler ones and the younger grades before going to the higher grades, because it's a program that really builds upon year to year to year to year. So we figured, let's start slow. So let's start with kindergarten and first grade and get them a foundation and foundations after. So our first graders last year, it was their first year. They hadn't really missed a lot, missing it from kindergarten because it was just 1 year. So this year we were able to move it on to grade 2, and then next year grade 3, which I'll talk a little bit more about that. So last year with kindergarten and grade 1, the way we started is every teacher was given a kit, and we were able to then provide daily lessons. It's taught every single day, roughly for 30 minutes. And from there, the teachers were able to kind of formulate who needs a little bit more. So the daily lesson is taught to all students in grades K and 1, like I said, and then students who struggle, we're also able to provide more of an intervention for them to kind of remediate needs a little bit more. So if I saw a student that was struggling with their vowels based on unit tests, based on classroom observation, based on, just any type of assessment that a teacher does in their normal daily instruction, I can then pull a group. I have enough materials with Foundations to be able to work on just these 5 students in my class that really aren't understanding their vowels, but the rest of my kids are able to understand that, and they're working on centers or something else. So I feel where our old reading program was lacking was kind of this area, was this intervention piece and the really, really strong core instruction, because the big difference for us with Foundations is that really typically you'd want to be 80% of students really should be doing kind of fine with that general instruction, and then it might be 20% of students that need a little bit more. So in a typical classroom you're looking at like 3-4 kids instead of, it should never be more than that, because then it's kind of like a lack of actual instruction or a lack of an actual program. So Foundations does an awesome job going nice and slow. It's really developmental for the kids. There's lots of picture support. There's a little owl puppet that goes with it, so it's very gimmicky. So the tier 1 instruction is just, we noticed last year as teachers, it was so much stronger using Foundations versus the program we had in the past. So we were pulling a lot less students for tier 2 to give better interventions more frequently and kind of more intensive. So that was kind of a big change we saw last year. So kindergarten starts pretty slow. They begin the year with the 12-week unit, and they're really just focusing on letters and sounds, which is so appropriate for kindergarten. In the past, we were working on introducing them to high-frequency words. We wanted them reading, small sentences, words, but we kind of went away with that and just really focused on Foundations. So the biggest thing for them is they have 12 weeks to really teach just letters and sounds and how to connect that to print, so kids are learning handwriting. At the same time, they're working on those phonological awareness skills, which I said it's when you're working on rhyming, you're working on taking sounds like at, putting it together to make a word cat, which seems silly, but for young ones who aren't reading yet, for some of them that can be so challenging, or, but it's very indicative of the future if they're going to become readers or not. So teachers are given a long time in kindergarten to really focus on those beginning skills, and then January, they're able to move on to the word level and the sentence level, and then work on beginning reading skills. First grade picks up from there, so we do a quick review, and then we move on to working with short words. We build on longer words. We teach students bigger units. We work on suffixes. We're able to move on to sentences pretty quickly, paragraphs, which become stories. Second grade, the hope is that they, again, build on from there. So what they're doing is they're working on bigger units of sound instead of just individual letters. Students are able to work on more prefixes, more suffixes, so they're working on word attack strategies to better understand them and better read them. And the hope is by second grade they have really good decoding skills so that they're able to become more fluent readers. So by the time that they're in third grade, they're reading like they're talking. It's almost just a natural thing that they're doing so that they can really comprehend what they're reading. So you can kind of see the progression. Where kindergarten, we're focusing really on those letters and sounds. First grade, we're working on putting those together at the word level. Second grade, we want them putting it together at the sentence level to become fluent and smooth at their reading. So by third grade, when they're taking state assessments, they're not having to stop and sound out words all the time, lose their meaning, and then the comprehension kind of fails there. So that's kind of how it kind of is building at the elementary school. Right now, K and 1 are on their second year of doing it, which is going really well. Second grade is just starting it for the first time this year, so I've done professional development with them last week to kind of help them sort of roll this out. The kids are ready to go. They've had it for a year in first grade, so some teacher feedback is that the kids have taught them how to teach the letters and the sounds, and the kids have taught them sort of how they should be doing it. So the kids are pretty familiar with the program. It's very patterned and repetitive, so they know exactly what to do. And third grade, the plan is to do a slower rollout. I'm going to hopefully provide professional development to them this year. Mr. Rulo has given them all of their kits, so they have their kits this year. They can take the time to look at setup. They can look at the sequence of the year. They can look at what's expected of them so that next year, when they're expected to start in September, they're able to go and they're ready to go. The kids will then, again, second graders will have already had it. So right now, the kids that are in third grade haven't had foundation, so it was sort of like starting like French 3 when you haven't had 1 or 2. They would have to backtrack so much that it was kind of hard to just jump right into it because it's such a language-based program. So overall, what we're seeing, just based off of teacher feedback this year and some beginning of the year data that we're looking at, handwriting is definitely a lot easier for students and teachers. Prior to this, we sort of wishy-washy had a handwriting program. We were using handwriting without tears, sort of, but now it's a part of the program. It's a part of our daily routine. The teachers are all using the same language. We call the lines all the same thing. The kids hear it all of the time. The parents are hearing it. There's a home component to it. So beginning of the year handwriting, when we've given them paper, you're not seeing that blank face where it's like, I don't know how to start my name on a paper. I'm not sure how to hold the paper. It's something that the kids already know, so there's kind of no frustration getting started. The kids are more strategic with their reading, so they're taught tapping strategies, so each tap would represent a sound in a word. So if I was trying to read the word cat, I would say cat, and then I read the whole word cat. So we're seeing kindergartners and first graders coming in, and if they don't know a word, it's not a big deal. They're easily just saying, I can just tap it. And even if it's a word that you can't tap, to them, they can try the word at least and tap, and if it doesn't come out to a real word, then of course, we're still helping them at this point. But they're sort of approaching reading with strategies. If they're stuck, where in the past they were kind of coming in and just getting stuck. More growth over the course of the year. So I just looked at my own data from 2 years ago when I had kids that had not had foundations in kindergarten. My average level of growth over the course of the year, as measured by the DRA, which is just kind of an overall picture of kids as a reader, and it gives you a reading level in terms of text to see if it's too challenging for them or too easy. I saw over the course of a first grade year, an average for my class, my kids grew 6 levels. Last year, my class grew 7 levels. So that was just with 1 year foundations. This year, my kids had it in kindergarten and they'll have had it in first grade. So just kind of to see that improvement, and I'm only speaking from my one class, it was impressive to see with just 1 year. Consistent language is used throughout CES, so even in the hallway when we have work sample tongue, the kids are saying, oh, even second graders are using the skyline letter, or the kindergartners are using the worm line letters, and things in the hallway. It's more consistent. And then from my standpoint, where I've been able to provide different professional development opportunities through my monthly ELA meetings, I'm just seeing that the teacher's own reading instruction here has gotten a lot deeper, so they're understanding what fundamental things have to take place if a child is to ever read. So slowing down and looking at the development of the readers and starting with those basic skills before jumping into words where kids might not be ready for that. I think teachers have gained a much deeper, greater understanding of how to teach reading and how to begin with that, with the use of foundations.
Any questions for Alyssa? As you can tell, she's enthusiastic about it.
Yes.
And that is one of the great components of having, that's why it's going to be successful. It's a process, and Alyssa understands that, much like the wind block you're going to hear, it's a process So because of that, I have two great people that are involved in this, and they live and dream this, so this is perfect, and this is why. We expect to see a lot of changes in the next 3 to 5 years, but it takes a little bit of time as we go on to build those foundational skills. And so I want to thank Alyssa. She's done a great job. She works with every single teacher on a monthly basis in order to make sure that they understand that. So as a group together, they're all going to grow.
Oh, good. Thank you both for the presentation. Are there any questions?
Very informative. Yeah, I just got one. When you said that, and I like this, the building block, what happens to a child that moves here, say in the 3rd grade? Are they behind?
Good question, if they haven't had the program. So the good thing about it is honestly most districts around us and even could be nationwide do use foundations. So like I had a student move in it wasn't halfway through the year, but it was like the 2nd month of the year. She came from Milford. She had used foundations, so she said, oh, like she already knew the line, she already knew the letters. A child that hasn't had it though, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're potentially behind, but I do think that that teacher would definitely probably have to pull the child and do a little bit of maybe catching up depending on where they're at. But I think because we're seeing a stronger core in grade K, 1, 2, and 3, that teacher's hopefully freed up a little bit because, like I said, only 20% of her class should be really having a hard time with it. So you're looking at 4 or 5 kids over the whole class. So even if that one moved in, I think that the teacher would then have the time to be able to back up and reteach that, and that's kind of where the wind block fits into what I'm saying. So, but yeah, no, that's a good question.
Yeah, very good.
You've done a great job on the PowerPoint.
I didn't make it.
I know.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the wind block. As Rob said, it's for what I need now. The goal is to provide kids with remediation of skills or enhancements if they need a little bit of enrichment in their day. Kind of gives opportunity for kids to get both ends of the spectrum there. So middle school is going to present after me, but we're doing it K to 8. So at the elementary school, basically what we're picturing is we're dealing with kids' attention spans, and at our level, we would probably agree we probably have a kid's attention for about 10 minutes, maybe, if we're talking a 6-year-old. So we're looking to run short, strategic, focused interventions based on student data. So this could look like a kiddo that is reading, but we're finding they don't know their sight words, so maybe we're targeting that as a place to focus on that. Maybe it's a fluency group. They're struggling with, reading smoothly like they're talking, so maybe our group is just focusing on what does good reading sound like and using different programs like Read Naturally or something like that within that group. 20 to 30 minute groups, which would offer that curriculum enhancement that I was talking about. So basically what we would look at is the curriculum we have in front of us and how do we enrich the curriculum, to add a little bit more rigor to the standards to challenge the kids within the room. So those groups will probably run a little bit longer because we expect them to be a little bit more independent, and we probably will have more project-based type activities for those children. Basically what's happening right now is we are meeting weekly. We're meeting 45 minutes or longer to plan and assess the data. So right now teachers are giving their beginning of the year assessments. That's the DIBELS, the days in 3rd grade, the DRA, which is a reading assessment, a phonological assessment, their foundations assessment, then their math beginning of the year assessment. And so we're sort of looking at those based on grades, then pulling the test a little bit to go a little bit deeper and look for the skills that need remediation so that the students can access the standard. So for example, in math, that might look like, one-to-one correspondence. Maybe we're running a group where they're just learning what that number really means, what that symbol actually means, and that could be an intervention group. For some kids, that again could be fluency in math, trying to get them to quickly learn their facts. And so this is just a picture of some of the teachers sitting around the table, and we're looking at data. Representation on this team are our special educators, our school psychologists, our ESL teachers, our reading specialists. Administration is part of it. I have a speech pathologist and an occupational therapist on there because also we're envisioning during the wind block, maybe kids that need some movement breaks during that time, maybe that's a good time that they could get that kind of work done as well. So this is just some pictures, although we haven't rolled it out, this is sort of what we envision it looking like. So you might see some one-to-one progress monitoring during the 6-week cycles. You might see a teacher with a group of students working on one particular skill, again, providing that intervention or that enhancement. We have the foundations board, so we will use the foundations intervention during this time. And then you might see like a literacy group going on if we were talking about enhancement. Goals for the WIN block are to provide strategic intervention to remediate skills to help students achieve progress toward grade level standards or expectations. So this we're looking at academically and socially. We're starting small our first cycle. We're hoping to roll out the middle of October. Just the goal is by the end of the year to kind of have a good sense of what we want it to look like for the following year. But our first cycle, we're starting really slow. We're looking at kids that need the intervention and getting them that, and then starting with the kids that we know based on DRA need the enhancement. And then we also might have kids with some social at the beginning of the year, just learning the expectations of the school. So we might run like our PBIS lessons during that time just to reteach social skills. What is the expectation at recess? What is the expectation? Some of these kids have never been to school, so we assume nothing. So that would be a good time to also provide some social intervention for them as well. And then the same thing, provide the curriculum enhancements to add that extra rigor to the curriculum as we have it for the children that need that. The WIN block takes place every single day. So the schedule this year was totally revamped. Prior, we sent like every class, it would be like Mrs. Piermarini's class would all go to gym at the same time. This time we've given the whole grade an aligned prep time, and so there's 6 specials, but maybe 8 grades, so the class size might be 20 or less in the classroom, but the special group might be 23, 24. So kids are going with different peers across their grade, which I think they love so far. I think it's going really well. And so that gives them an aligned prep, which allows us to have a block, which was the tricky part of implementation here. So each grade level has about 30 to 45 minutes. The way we're envisioning it to go is our first cycle is going to run for 6 weeks, again, middle of October, so I'm predicting that to finish up after Thanksgiving break. And then the 7th week we'll reassess the effectiveness. So kids will be that are identified for a group will be given a baseline test coming into their group. We'll sort of progress monitor along the way, and then at the end we'll give them another assessment to measure growth to see if the intervention was effective or not. And then at the 7th week, that big WIN team that I showed you earlier will sort of go through and sort of decide, does this child need another cycle of it? Do we need to try something different with that child? Or if they're on the other end and they're sort of getting that enhancement piece, are they really able to handle, or do we need to relook at something? Maybe we're missing something for that child as well. So I basically said all this. Our goal is to roll out by mid-October. We're right now in process of just sort of looking through the kids. We have our lists identified, and now it's sort of going back through and looking at their work to sort of find those skills that they're lacking, and then we're matching up the different interventions that we have. So we have a foundations intervention, we have that fluency intervention, read naturally, we're using parts of the PAL. For math, we have, I have this whole RTI kit that we're using for each grade level, which sort of works off like number sense and whatnot, and they all have curriculum-based measures to give. So it's basically we're just going to hand it to the teacher that's delivering that intervention or enhancement, and so that way we know what they're doing and what to expect back. And that's the end of mine. Is there any questions for me?
You mentioned that students get evaluated, the slides did, on data.
Yeah.
Can you just briefly speak, what does that data entail?
Sure. So for the ELA piece, every kid is given the DIBELS assessment, which is a reading indicator. So what we do is there's targeted benchmarks. We look at that, and then kids that are identified maybe in the at-risk range, we're now pulling their actual form and looking through their miscues. So we're now identifying their miscues. Is this a kid that has BD confusion? Is this a kid that doesn't have sight words? Is this a kid who's reading without meaning? That kind of thing. In third grade, there's a comprehension activity that goes with it, which is closed, so they might be really good at reading fluency and reading on benchmark, but their comprehension is low. So that's a kid we've ID'd that might need a comprehension group. We use things called the PASS, which is a phonemic awareness assessment. So again, it can identify particular breakdown that we might need to look on that we could use for Foundations. And Foundations has the whole intervention kit. As far as math goes, we have beginning of the year assessments that are based on standards from the previous year. So based on like their score, if they got, let's say, 60% or below, we might target those kids first. And what we're doing is looking through their actual work and seeing like where is the breakdown. Is it one-to-one correspondence? Basically digging out the foundational skills that the child is lacking.
A lot of the reading assessments are literally, it's not just a quiz, it's like kids reading a passage to you, and the teacher's literally like, they couldn't do this word, they couldn't do that word, and then they can use that to assess what their skill is.
Yep. Yeah, so we're really sort of looking at what the kid is presenting to us and then trying to make a lesson that's matching what they need.
Okay, thank you. I did have one more. The time for the students that needed extra help and was, I believe you said like 15 to 20.
Yeah.
And then the time for students like enhancement, so students that were going above and beyond, was a little bit longer. How does the different time frame work out, like logistically? How does that work out?
Logistics is a great question. We're in the middle of working that out, but basically there's staff freed up. So I might even be involved in the WIN block, get me back in the classroom teaching a little bit, but basically a teacher will be assigned that particular group and will be overseeing that group. So let's say that it's a classroom teacher that's providing it. I might send in, let's say it's Mr. Ogilvy, I always pick on him, but he might be freed up that period. He would cover that classroom. I'd pull that teacher, and that teacher would oversee the group. Because what's happening, that's actually a really good question, what's happening in the classroom for those kids that might not be in a WIN group, they're doing just what they've always done, which is basically, their center time, which might be practice, reviewing skills that they've already done independently in the room. So really anyone could be in there just sort of monitoring what those children are doing, and our most critical kids are being pulled out. And if the teacher's in the room, the teacher then also maybe providing some tier 2 or some clarifications to students that might need small group, just as they've always done here during that block.
And I think to clarify, part of his question was the WIN block is the same length. So for that grade, it's going to be 30 minutes.
Right.
But the targeted intervention might only be 15. So that teacher might actually work with 2 different groups.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but the whole grade level would be, their WIN block would be like the 30 minutes or 35
Gotcha.
minutes, yeah.
So the way we have it too is we might have a kid that might need a reading intervention and a math intervention, so that was part of it. So they might be 15 minutes working with the reading, and then they're going to go back, but then they might need a math intervention. So somebody else might come, and there's sort of that space to give them a little bit of break to transition, but then they might get pulled for a math intervention as well. So we can sort of maximize the amount of kids we're servicing in that amount of time. And the groups are looking good. They're staying at like 5, 6 in those intervention groups once I break them down. So that's pretty cool. And then for some of our needier ones, I can even like stretch it out. So if I gave that teacher 6 kids for 45 minutes and that's all they need, they might get some one-on-one time in there too, which is pretty cool to be able to do.
Other questions?
So I think that, just start off by saying, thank you for all the hard work, because I recognize that everything that's been laid out would normally take a school district a year to be able to do that. I understand that you did it in the summertime, so thank you very much. And a lot of hard work has gone into this, and I can see all of that. My only question, and I understand that you only had the summertime to put it in place. Have we looked into rotating the block, or is it a fixed block time?
So for now, it's fixed block. It's, again, something that could totally come up as we're going through.
And I understand with the shortage of time and the complexity of what we're rolling out, we're forced for that to happen, and I can understand that. I'm just asking if we could look at, the potential of rotating that in the future.
Yeah, and there's a spot in the day, like our kindergarten staff right now ended up falling at the end of the day just because they start later, and so that's not always the most dynamic time. But I have worked in a morning block for them as well. So it might not be as many staff available, like I have tons of staff to load them up, but there'll be a spot to add as they need intervention. Right now, when I was looking at kindergarten, they might not necessarily need intervention, where they just might need a review or clarification because they're all just coming. So that was one spot we were trying to play with a little bit, and that would, again, push everybody.
So that's a question, so like with wind blocks, they kind of occur all day, because they kind of stagger throughout each grade. But you, within the grade, rotating it, so they're not always at the end of the day.
I'm only thinking about for like, students with medication, different
Yeah.
times of the
Yeah.
days. But I understand that, this is brand new,
Yeah.
we're rolling it out, this is a great job, very impressed. I'm just saying for a future thought.
Yep, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
Wind block 2.0.
Anyone else? I would just like to add to them and say thank you that teaching, we all know, is incredibly complex, and personalizing learning so much more so. And a lot of schools and school districts don't get this far because it's hard and it's logistically challenging, and it takes effort, and it takes a willingness, and just know how appreciative we are as school committee members, as parents, for all of the efforts that you're putting forth.
Thank you. And just so you know, I did warn all the teachers the first cycle. Imagine like your white living room, white couch, white rug, muddy dog, like coming in. And
Maybe
then,
the first 6
it's only
weeks.
going to get better. Right.
Right.
It's only going to get better
Right.
through feedback.
But we were worried about the mixing up the groups for specials too, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
day 2, that was fine, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit stressed about sending first graders to purple and blue, but everybody's done really well, and a lot of that goes to the teachers, because if they weren't on board and willing, it could have been a nightmare, but they're really excited about it, and you can put the best schedule in place, but if they're not on board, it's not going to work. So that all goes back to them.
So I want to say, again, these guys have been, for the last 5 years, I believe the elementary school's come a long way. We started off with that curriculum, we tore it apart, we've reborn several times around the lines. We've done math, and Meg also serves as the math department head, which is very beneficial to me along the lines. She knows what she's talking about. Alyssa's come along with the ELA. Without these two, forget it. I mean, in all honesty, I know that, and these guys have done a fabulous job because they believe in it. We believe it here at the elementary school in general, but we also believe it at the middle school and the high school, and I think Mr. Hastings is the first one to say is it always starts from the very beginning, and it works its all the way up to the top. So you see those kids graduating later on, those foundational skills have been built since they're 2 and 3 years old all the way through, and I want to say this. So I know Anne Marie has a lot more, and I mean, we started data probably 5 or 6 or 7 years ago at the middle school, and she built that process, so when the wind block came along, she was, her and Megan were the first ones to say, let's jump in on this and let's see what we can do. So I think in the next couple of years, you'll see a tremendous amount of changes and continual growth in the school district. And again, from all the teachers and everybody, they put a tremendous amount of effort. And I want to thank Steve for coming in and enlightening us in this way, because we were kind of stuck in one particular way. We were searching for something. And when he came back, he goes, give this a shot. And he understands it's a process. So I thank him for that too, because it is going to take a little while in order to make it turn over and do very well. So I turn this back to Anne Marie for the middle school.
We're also implementing the wind block, but of course at the middle school it's going to look a lot different. And I have to say, Mike, that was a very good question, because I'm all about rotating. We have a rotating schedule except for our wind block, because our wind block is now taking place of the flex period that we used to have, and it's 45 minutes in length like all of our other classes. So I thought I could really get this all to rotate in the first year, but it became a little more difficult, and I think Mr. C told me to just kind of slowly get this in place. So our wind block is our flex period. It ends, it's the last period of the day, so it begins about 1:43 and goes to 2:30. We have to do it a little different because we don't have as much support staff to be able to go to all 5 grade levels at the same time. So we're doing one grade level that I call, that we're really pushing into it. So we have 12 staff including the regular ed teachers, and we're attacking one grade at a time for 4 weeks to start with. So with the 12 staff coming in, we can have our small groups where we are doing some remediation of skills for students that really need it in the math and reading areas. And we also have the rigor where we're going to challenge students with project-based activities. So we're going to present them with a problem. So they're going to use math, science, and reading skills together. So here's the problem. There might be 25 students in that particular class, but broken into 5-person teams, each with a different problem, and they've got to solve it. They're going to have steps that they have to do before they can actually ask the teacher to help them. So it will all be broken down. This is what you do first, this is your second choice, so that they can really tap into the 5 students in that group's ability to work as a team to solve the problem. And then, of course, there's the teacher. There'll be technology resources, because we have so many Chromebooks, thanks to you guys, that they can do some research if they need to, but it'll be a more hands-on, problem-solving type thing. And then we're going to have a group that will use IXL, which we purchased license for us. Now we have ELA and math. So knowing the students' needs based on data that we've collected from the beginning of this year, from what we're bringing from the past in with them, and putting all this together. Grade 6 has been working, Mr. C, the last 3 weeks? So we have formalized the teams. We know where the kids are going. As of today, that was all formalized. So the next week, now we're looking at what are the materials that we're using, and we have different resources. We're going to do book studies with some of the groups too. Kids who excel in reading and love reading, they're going to do book studies. So the kids who may not go to the problem-based solving problems type group, they'll go to a book study group. So there'll be 2 accelerated groups that can be challenged that way. The smaller groups, there's no more than 6 students, either go into a reading group with our Title I staff, doing some fluency, doing some comprehension strategies, and building like vocabulary development and what, how they can start decoding words better, because we do, even in 6th grade, have students that still struggle with this, but we want to fine tune that as they go into junior high next year. The middle group will use the Common Core strategies, standards, and what we'll do is they'll have specific ones that the entire group will do. So there might be 12 or 15 kids in these groups. So everybody will do, the first section of those strategies, but then they're going to be broken up to, you need this, these will be your 3 things that we want you to work on independently. You need this, you'll work on yours independently, all based off of data that we've collected. So that looks a little different. It could run from 20 minutes, allowing students the last 25 minutes to do some homework, to get extra help if they need it from the teacher that they're grouped with for that time frame. Some classes might take a little bit longer depending on the direct instruction that we're working on, allowing the teacher that has the small groups to do some one-on-one. So that might run 30 to 35 minutes, but we still want to have time to get students started on their homework in case they're struggling, didn't understand it, and we want to reteach something. So that's kind of where our WIN block is going. We do have additional staff, as I said, assigned to each grade level. So we're going to go from grade 6 to grade 5. So grade 5 at their CPT this week will start to get the introduction of what data are you looking at, because they will have a little bit more. They have the GMAT, they have the DRAs, because they're almost done those, plus the DIBELS, the days, where grade 6 doesn't have all of that data. So they'll start talking about and thinking about groupings. Now there's a lot more kids in grade 5, so we're going to take a little bit longer. That's why they're not the first group to roll this up. Then once grade 5 is getting a handle on it, grade 6 is already going. I think Mr. Seed and I at some point are going to have to take a group because of the numbers. It didn't disperse the way we thought it might, but we're happy with the way it did break up in the 6th grade. So we'll help step in and help with maybe a small group. We both have taught math, reading, so we're okay. And if we get called out, we have a plan in place that we would have a go-to room. So there'd be a staff in there, and it might be one of those IXL groups, so kids would still be getting activities what they need now, because we'll have all of this ready for them. The biggest changes from going from flex to the wind block for us is we used to allow students to, there was a homework period, for those students that didn't go to band or to chorus or to art or, you know, learning lab or all the other things that they were pulled out for. So unfortunately, homework, more of it will have to be done at home because we want to provide students with what they need now and catch them up or challenge them. The other thing that we see as a change too is allowing students to more do group work, which we're excited about, and tapping into their own expertise in forming those groups. So I know that I'm not going off that side, you know, reading that, I'm just kind of putting it together for you. Right now, the grade level teams meet weekly. And again, that's their common planning time, but it's really focused on the wind block right now. Looking at data, how are we going to break up students, and students who might need some support with reading and math. Our ultimate goal after this first pilot is to allow them, as the elementary school will be doing, is maybe the first 2 weeks might be focused on the reading, and then the next 2 weeks get them into a math group so that they're getting more supports as time goes on, because ours would be 4 weeks with this big push-in, with this big team, and going from grade 6 to 5 to 4 back up to 7 and 8, and then starting the process. So when that push-in group is happening, the other 4 grade levels are still doing a wind block, but the wind block for some of those kids would be band, would be chorus, would be art. But when your group is in the push-in and we have the extra staff coming in to meet the needs of the students, they will not be going to any other activity but to be getting the services that they need now, if that makes sense. So that would be different. But when they're not in the grade level, that big team of people coming in, they would be able to get remedial help. So if I need some science support, the science teacher would have their room open for me. So maybe I need to take the notes, or I didn't understand the lab, and I can get the extra help that way. So it would be more extra help oriented, and I can choose as a student what I would like to do during that time. And again, for about 20, 25 minutes, and then back to your home base and start a homework so that we know when you're leaving school, you're ready to complete the homework successfully, independently. But also be in chorus art. What else do we have? Be in chorus art. I think those are the basic things, along with learning lab. So that would be the difference. Ours will eventually rotate, just like it was a period, next year, so that I am a believer that I might be a morning student and not an afternoon student, and if you have me in the afternoon, you might not see my best. So I want you to see me at all times of the day so that you know that I can really be that student that you're looking for from me. So I'm a strong believer of rotating. It just was trying to get that wind block to rotate this year, but I'm very, very excited about implementing this. And our goal is hopefully to get this off, if not next week, the following week.
So I think, like you mentioned, you've got your flex period is now basically the same length as the rest of the periods, to give you more time to get this in. And then that should hopefully allow, you know, the difference, I'd say that the major difference between the logistics of the elementary school and the middle school right now. The elementary school, the wind block happens throughout the day. So the kindergartens might be or first grades might be at 9:30, and second grades might be at 10:15, and it kind of goes along throughout the day. Whereas at the middle school right now, it's all happening at 1:43. So that's why it looks a little different, where they're going to kind of focus in on one grade at a time and kind of cycle through. So it's great that we're starting that transition, starting those conversations, starting that process of looking at data and trying to provide interventions and enrichments for students who need them. But I think ultimately our goal would be, now that it's kind of the same length, how can we work that throughout the day into that rotating schedule so we can use that staff throughout the day to get those smaller groups in every grade. And that's more of a, next year as we plan down the road. But I think right now, the big focus is we're getting this whole process through with the teachers, with looking at the data, building those groups, planning those interventions, so that we're kind of developing that process and that toolkit so that next year we'll have everything ready to go.
The good thing about rotating it for us next year is there'd be more services, like they're able to use like OT, PT, speech and language, and all of those extra resources, and that's our goal, to do that too. And hopefully by the first of the year, we'll be able to use a little bit more of that. Once their schedules are set and we know where they're, because some of them share buildings. So if we can have them in our building on even certain days, maybe 2 or 3 days a week, that would be extra support and additional staff for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So for the, you said the wind block is just for the 6th graders, so your other classes are still on the flex for the rest of the year?
No, it's still the wind block. It just looks a little different. They don't have the additional staff, so we don't have those small groups, but they'll still get remediation. But the student themselves can say, I'm stuck in math, I'm going to go to my math teacher at that period. Or I missed a science lab, I can go make it up. It also allows time for the teacher to say, you know what, Johnny, I didn't think you really understood today's, comprehension of the novel we're reading. Why don't we just go over it? I want to assure that you, or even give them, if they're working on a project, come work in my room and I can support you.
Perfect.
I think you used to kind of have that mindset of flex was sort of that period that exists in almost every middle school because they needed to figure out a time to have band. And then pretty much it was like, well, while we have band, what do we do with all the rest of the kids? And I think now trying to just spin it a little bit more. So yeah, band's one thing that might happen, but it's still got more of that academic focus and really trying to say, what are we doing to actually meet the individual needs of these learners or provide for them the area that they need assistance on. And I would just say, I want to thank everyone who presented tonight, and obviously the administration at the elementary school and the middle school. I think, we went from having some, our admin retreats, some informal conversations about what the wind block might look like, how that process goes, and they've really been able to just take off and run with it. And I think, honestly, we've got a lot more accomplished in a short time than I thought. I thought a lot of this would be next year stuff that we've been able to kind of get off the ground, and I think it's great.
Thank you for your work.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Mr. Superintendent.
My turn?
It is.
What's Parent University?
Oh, did you want to talk about Parent University?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Sorry, time's up.
Sorry.
Please
So,
continue.
I don't know, 3 years ago, Miss Sheridan started Parent Universities here at the elementary school here. Parents would come in the evening, and they would have different sessions that they could sit in and learn about. And now that her parents are now in my building, they like this idea, and so last year I held a couple, and they're really already reaching out to me because they want to learn about the wind block. They want to sign up for iParent, especially the 4th grade parents, asking a lot of really good questions. And the best way to reach a majority of them is to do it in the evening when they're available. So our first Parent University is going to be on October 18th at 6:30 in the evening. And our focus is going to be the wind block. So there'll be a presentation they can sit in for the wind block. There'll be a session on iParent and how helpful it can be to you as a parent having an account and being able to track your child's progress daily. I hate to say 24/7 if you really wanted to. And then I thought the other topic that evening would be the delivery of special ed services for our students, as well as some ESL background for those families, because we're really trying to get the communication open and inviting all groups in during our Parent University. So I have to thank Ms. Sheridan for starting this because it's such an awesome idea. I ran a couple last year and I couldn't believe so many people came, it was amazing. And them asking already at open house, you know, when are you going to hold your first parent university? So we're going to probably run 3 or 4 this year, based on need.
Thank you.
All right, so the first agenda item under the superintendent's report is staffing. In your packet, I believe you have a retirement letter from Brenda Seymour. And I think what you can see on there is the way she wrote the letter, and we talked about this a little bit, is I believe in the contract it's worded that they're supposed to retire at the semester break, which would be January 19th, or the halfway point. However, she is willing to extend that time to February 9th. The reason is she talked to Mr. Hastings and myself about it, and really it's to make sure that she is an ESL teacher. It's to make sure that she stays throughout the entirety of the ESL, the access testing window, and to help provide a transition for those kids. So, you know, she's not trying to, I guess the way I tried to work with her on the letter is she's not asking for a favor from us. She's offering to do us a favor. So I'm in support of accepting her retirement effective February 9th, if the committee is okay with that.
Questions?
It doesn't affect her retirement pay, I mean, we're not.
Well, that would be the only
She's not
question that
losing
I have.
anything
Is
by
there
doing that, right?
any
Shouldn't lose
additional
anything.
obligation to us or to her that from a financial perspective?
I mean, we'll pay her for 2 more weeks, but we'll figure that out with the, you know, as we bring in her replacement and stuff,
Right.
which we are going to hope to have a little bit of overlap there, since especially
time.
because it is you know, our ESL population, and we want to make sure that we're sensitive to some of those students' needs. And it'll be nice to even have maybe a little extra staff around during that access testing window so they can get it done. So.
And they're tough positions to fill to begin
Yeah,
with.
so we'll probably start that, so we talked about making sure we're on that around November, so. So I don't know, do you guys typically have a motion to accept that, or are you okay? Do you want to do a motion, just since it's an oddball date?
And we certainly can. I don't know that that's necessary procedurally, but would anyone like to make a motion to accept the retirement as amended?
I'll make that motion.
In a second.
I'll second it.
Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
All right, and the next letter was from Alyssa, who was just here, who is requesting maternity leave from her due date, which is around January 20th. She plans on taking maternity leave through the rest of the year. I told her I think we should deny it and just bring her mom in to sub every day and watch the kids. But I think she's probably contractually entitled to this. So I don't know if we necessarily need a motion on that. That's really just kind of informing you of that. Facilities, we have some updates. The Ash Street Playground, we have sent the PO to go with the company to get the replacement. We're going with the company that built the original structure. One of the main deciding factors in that came down to timeliness, and it came down to they're really the company that could deliver it this fall and didn't have to push us off into the spring. And you know, I worry about when you push that off into the spring. Now you're dealing with, you know, we'll get to it when the ground thaws, and now they're gonna say, well, now the ground's too muddy, and you know, and it becomes a whole year without a playground. So you know, they were on the state bid list. We talked to Mike Ward about it, the procurement officer for the town, and you know, he said we did above our, we went above and beyond what we had to do by trying to reach out to other companies to solicit other quotes, and the fact that they weren't able to do it in a timely manner, we're fine going with the company on the bid list. So hopefully we can get that. The PO has been sent in. I think it was about 6 weeks till they figured it would be install time, just so to get all the stuff in. But I'll keep you posted as I hear more on the specifics of the dates. The middle school repair updates, oh, sorry.
I know we had talked about it. Are you going to put it in the same spot? I know.
Yeah, we went out and we looked around there, and I think you're dreaming about that place.
Well, that's what I told you. I didn't actually walk the ground.
So, I get confused. You were thinking you were in Vale Street or something.
No, I drove by.
For those that don't watch the home edition of our school committee, Mr. Bailey in the last meeting asked if it were possible to either move or relocate the playground structure, and so you've looked into that.
Yeah, I took a walk down there, Rob took a walk down there, we checked it out, and it really would just eat, with the size you're gonna need for the playground structure, it would eat up too much of the field. There was no way to sandwich it there. It did remind me of a good point, though. I did talk to Mr. Colbus today, and I know that they're planning on trying to, as part of the Little League down there, to really try to get a volunteer effort to kind of clean out a lot of the shrubbery and the woods back there. I guess there's been some things that have been dumped and those types of things, and trying to maybe open that up a little bit so it's less inviting for that type of stuff, and really try to get some of that ivy growing. And we tried to cut back a lot over the summer, but just to really kind of go further. So they're targeting like an October 14th date probably to do some sort of a volunteer cleanup effort down there. And I said certainly we'd help support that if we can, and try to get anything we can to get that area looking nice. The middle school repair updates. There were just a couple things I know that were sort of an urgent matter when we did the facilities walkthrough. One was the doors in the technology room. We did have Clinton Locksmith came in, and he tried to readjust the hinges and stuff so that the doors they're still not, they're not 100%. I'm not going to say they're magically fixed, but they're operable now as an emergency exit, which was the main key. So, it still is a little tough to close them correctly, but you can open them now and get out, which is the main thing we needed to do. There's also been a lot of work. You might have seen a dumpster up there. I don't know if it's still there or not. Been cleaning out a lot of this stuff that's accumulated in the in that wood shop area, so we can get to the dust collector unit, which had not been working and had been full. And we've already contacted the company that services the dust collector at the high school. They're going to be coming over to clean that and do the maintenance on that. So I think most of the issues that we had of urgent need at the middle school have been addressed. We also had one small area in a classroom where some of the tile came up because of some water, and we did have Depot Flooring, I think, come up and look at giving us some quotes on different phases. I asked them to at least get some quotes of what's the repair cost, what's the whole room cost, what's that kind of stuff, so that we can try to avoid the patchwork quilt look of the floors.
That might be an emergency. Just kidding.
So no, but I do think but we did say while he's up there to start getting the process of, one of the things we want to do is, when you start any type of major project or bid process, you got to figure out what's the ballpark you're even in. So trying to start even thinking of what ballpark are we talking if we said let's replace all the flooring in the first floor, and at least then we kind of know, where that's going. So we're trying to get the ball rolling on that to at least figure out, a range if we wanted to pursue that or not, or at least we know. Mm-hmm. The next one, security cameras. So kind of connected to the Ash Street Playground. If we're putting in this brand new play structure, we want to make sure it's protected. So we did have a camera company come out and walk through the entire elementary school, Mr. Rullo and I and the camera company representative, and we looked at, there'd be 2 cameras outside over by Ash Street. There'd be other cameras outside monitoring, basically like the other playground structures and like where kindergartners are, so when they're playing, no one could just kind of come do anything there. Also monitoring each of the doorways where pickup happens for pre-K and K, and in front of the school, and a couple like in the hallways, so you could see, if someone's using the gym on the weekend or something, you could see down that hallway. So we did get a quote for the elementary school cameras, and to do everything, I think it's a 16 camera system, but it's 16 cameras installed, but the capability for a 32 camera system, because they recommend you do that anyway, so you can add them, it would be about $18,000. So that's something that we've got to, consider. I mean, for that price, for $18,000, we don't have to go to bid, but I am going to need to get three written quotes. We only have one at this time, so I'll have to contact some other companies. And then obviously, if we feel that that's too much to spend in 1 year, we can always scale it back. We might still want to buy the 32 channel control system. Maybe we only install the exterior cameras this year or something like that. So we can scale that back depending on what we want. But just giving you a ballpark, that's where that lands, and that would be pretty much a wish list. I mean, that was us walking around saying it would be great if we had this here, this here, this here, which is all needed things. It would allow us to monitor pretty much the entire building. So that's kind of a ballpark. I think we might be able to do the elementary school cameras this year. I mean, if 18,000 is there, we could probably use some rental facility money and get that done, especially if we get another couple quotes and we scale it down a little bit. We'll see as we go through that process. We'll see how other things are holding up, but we can probably sneak that in. I think it'd be wise to protect our playground investment.
It's going to be a live feed into the central office?
Yeah, it should be live feed to our mobile phones and all that kind of stuff. So, we could watch it from wherever.
I would say that my own experience has been with them that it's not always necessarily the right way to do it that way, just because you may want to just keep it underneath the network. Rather than have a lot of different access points to it in terms of what that might mean for someone else grabbing that feed and using it somewhere else. But
so we can check it all as we go.
Yeah. I would just say that I commend you for looking at it. I think not only is it not only is it the right time to do this, I think it's long overdue. I think that we have not only does it provide a disincentive for knowing that there are cameras all around and that they're being monitored, but I think it goes a long way to help protecting the investment and providing a sense of security as well.
And I think especially in this day and age with, just everything, I mean, just, having those, I think getting even the pickup areas,
right.
Having video there, because you never know what could happen, and I think it's just, so I think that, hopefully we'll be able to, I'll keep working on trying to get a couple more quotes, so hopefully we can try to get the camera system going along with the playground install. I'll bring those quotes back to you before we make any decision. The remaining ones, I just kind of made a note there that, looking at possibly a safety and security warrant article maybe for next year. The CMS and CHS cameras, I figured we could get some quotes for them. I'm assuming that if 18,000 for this building, it's probably going to be the ballpark around there. It might be, a little different depending on, some of the different infrastructure things and where you really want to focus, but probably in the same ballpark. The fire alarm control system, I know Libby contacted them. They came up this morning to start getting us a quote on what it would cost to upgrade that. I thought that might be something we could sort of roll into like a security and safety warrant article. And then I put CHS emergency generator work. I know when we were at the town emergency management meeting, they talked about wanting to maybe upgrade the generator so that they could use the high school as a emergency shelter. And I thought that might be a way to sort of kind of, tie all that in together in one warrant article that really everyone's supporting. It's really the town and school safety and security warrant article. So, that's an idea, and obviously we can pursue that as we go through the budget process, but I just figured I'd share that.
One question, Dr. Meyer, with the security camera quote, does that include extra lighting in like motion detection or anything like that? Or is it just the existing lighting that's there and the quote's just for the cameras?
I think it would just be the existing lighting, but I think there is something special about some of the outside cameras. I mean, they're not going to be able to magically see in the dark, but but I think they are designed more for like a outside nighttime type camera. But
okay,
I can double check on that. But
just might be something to consider when we're getting the quotes together, because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if
particularly for out there, a couple of lights. I mean, around most of the buildings.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I think Matt actually, Mr. Kobus mentioned to me that National Grid will do some security lighting for free, and that the Little League had been approached the Board of Selectmen about that they would put up some security lighting for free. Just the town would have to pay for the electricity, and I think he went to the Select Board about trying to have them pay for it. So, but anyway, that's, that's a point well taken. Mm-hmm. So, in terms of fencing, we did have the Aero Fence Company come out. They're the ones that did the front fence area there. They came out on the 18th. They met with Casey Gannon and I, and we followed the notes that we did on our walk around, Joel, and we went around and looked at all the fence and stuff. He's going to give us two quotes. One is really for the general fence repair, just all around the property, and the other one is going to be focused more on the netting by the that middle school baseball field, which is in kind of disrepair right now. And I think it's, we need to just make a decision of, what's that field going to look like in the future going forward, and if we're using all that netting, we got to fix it, and if we're not, then take it down. Right now, it's just a ivy growing everywhere. So, but that's those quotes should be coming. They just, like I say, came the 18th. We haven't got the quotes back from them yet.
Great.
Solar panels. So you do have a draft letter of intent for Select. This was the solar company I talked about. So the Board of Selectmen have moved forward. They signed a letter of intent with Select to have them do the feasibility study on the DPW building. We looked into some of the other things. We do have a power purchase agreement right now where we're buying our power at a fixed rate. Right now, that rate I think is 8.6 cents a kilowatt hour. But in a few months, when the next phase kicks in, it'll actually go to 9.6 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you remember, this project was to allow us to buy power at 9.8 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, it might seem like we're buying it more, but what we're talking about in our power purchase agreement is just the supply power. We still pay about a 4.5 cent delivery charge. So when you buy your power, you can choose your supplier, but National Grid's still your delivery. And so they add a few more cents onto that. Where with the solar agreement, you would pay no delivery charge because it's on your roof and it's coming into your building. So that's the savings. So their proposal is a 500,000 kilowatt hour array on top of the high school, looking at a 500,000 kilowatt hour in the middle school, and I think it's 350,000 on this building. The estimated savings for each of those, it was about 21,000 for a year for the first year, and expected to go up each year after that, or for the middle and the high school, and I think it was about 13.5 here. Once again, they're feasibility studies, and the biggest question of all this is, are any of our roofs in the condition to handle solar right now? So the question comes, do we want to sign a letter of intent and have them come out, look at the conditions of the roof, look at everything else they need to look at the load capacity of the roof, and if it's feasible, we're going to move forward, or do we want to pass, in which case, if we pass, like we mentioned before, the only negative of that, we can still explore solar at any time. The only time crunch is sort of the solar, the SRECs, like the solar regulations and stuff are going to change in March. So that'll be a different cycle, which means that 9.8 cents price would probably be more like 10 or 11 based on the way it goes up each round of those things. So it's the worst case scenario is it's $1,500 we'd have to pay per building. So each of these letter of intents would be per building. You do one for each facility. I don't know, we could do one of them just to pilot something. We could do, all three of them if you wanted. I don't know, this building here would be a little bit smaller. I also feel that you run into, this is probably the only building, and you hate to say it a little bit, but you could run into some of the aesthetics of this building. It's got, it's something that's a little more visible. If you're up on, High Street, you're gonna look down and see solar array on the front of the school. And then, but that's, it's fine. It's just something that, you try to figure pros and cons people are gonna look at. I know someone's probably gonna not like that. I think the high school is probably the best candidate because I think that we might, like I said, we might be able to look into something where a minor roof repair, like a new membrane on that roof, could be maybe lumped in as part of the scope of that project, which might change our 9.8 cents to a few cents higher or a cent and a half higher. But now we got a free roof out of it, and we don't have to worry about the, it's going to cut into that savings a little bit. There'll still be savings. But now we also don't have to worry about redoing the roof in the high school for 20 years. And the problem with the middle school, I feel like the middle school roof already had like that second membrane put on it. So now you're really at that point, they don't put a third membrane on. Usually now you're rip and replace, which that project's gonna cost a lot. I think that's something that we might wanna pursue through the MSBA later.
So and I'll open it up to other questions in a second, but my question was relative to that. If we did this feasibility study on the middle school roof, anyway, that would serve the dual purpose of, either we know or we don't know with regard to solar panels, but we can also use that with MSBA in terms of, the engineering, the structural integrity of that part of the building as well.
I mean, in a way, yeah, you could look at that and say, if they do this, their due diligence, they come out, they do their report, and they come back and say, we can't put solar panels on your roof because of X, Y, and Z. Well, now, when we do a MSBA accelerated repair program application looking at roofs and boilers, what we can do is we can state X, Y, and Z as part of that. That's one way to go. And I should mention, I did clarify that when they do this, one of the parts of the feasibility study will include looking at our existing power purchase agreements. So we did talk, Karen called the company today, I did speak to one of the representatives there, and they said typically, when we're talking, if we were gonna do, say, one school, ultimately that's what came out, usually the power purchase companies are gonna just do an amendment to your agreement and let you do it, because you're talking, we're using 2.4 megawatts, is that what it was? And this is going to be 500,000 kilowatts, so it's like 20% of our load if we did one school. So if we really end up going just with the high school, you're talking about 20% of our load. The high school typically uses, it's like 870,000 kilowatt hours. So if we put like a 500,000 kilowatt hour array up on the roof, you're still only covering just about 2/3 of the power consumption of just that building. So so that's sort of the scale we're talking there. So I'm fine either way. I don't know if I had it on here or not, but we do have facilities director finalist interviews coming up soon. So pretty soon there will be someone on board whose job it would be to do nothing but investigate all of these things. But then there is that, do we want to try to get in under this round of regulations? So, it's...
But there really isn't any cost to us unless they say, so if the buildings are capable of adding solar panels and we go ahead and do it, there's
no
savings.
cost. Yeah.
But there's not only no cost, but there's savings.
Right.
If they're not feasible, then we have an engineering firm that has said, we're going to need to invest in these roofs, and there's no cost. The only cost comes if they say, yeah, these would be great candidates for solar panels, and we say, yeah, never mind.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, I think that if the town is on board with it, if all of the work that you have done to research this, I'm open to whatever the board thinks, but...
Did you have...
Just for
I know you were-
clarification.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. No.
So we can still say that we're not doing it. The only time that they'd come back and charge us for the study would be if we decided to go with someone else for solar, right?
I think it's actually, even if we don't do it, if we say, let me see.
I think if they conclude that we can handle it.
Oh,
and
I
then we
thought
back out.
the
But the
way it was
$1,500
first.
penalty is still probably cheaper than an engineering study for... the
Yeah, it depends on the
structural
level of
integrity
detail
of
they
the
share
roof.
with us for that, but if we're paying for it, we should be able to get all the detail they have. But I think your point is well taken. The only gray area here comes if they're saying, well, it's feasible, you just need to do this, 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 and this, and we say, well, we can't do this, 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 and this, and they're like, oh, well, then, I guess you're not gonna do it, where's our $1,500?
Right.
But I don't think that's the way they intend this to be, but that's the one caution you have, is you gotta worry about
But
just...
they also have state
Yeah, they're on a state bid list, they have,
responsibilities,
yeah,
so there's-
exactly, so they're not gonna,
it's not a
they're not...
fly-by-night kind
Yeah,
of-
they're not in the business of trying to make everyone mad, because they like their contracts, so...
And the town already signed this?
The town already signed one with the, for the DPW building, yes.
I thought with and maybe he didn't actually do it, it was his proposal. I thought like 5-6 years ago, we already did this. And I'm not sure.
That was a solar farm.
No,
they were
I was going to
talking
get to that in a minute. No, I know
Oh.
that's for I thought the school had one of the schools, I don't know if it was all the schools, or they just had somebody look at one school And and I know you weren't here, I wasn't
Yeah.
here either, but I thought they had already done this.
I've heard rumors of that as well.
Maybe they didn't go through with it, maybe there was,
Energy study, but it was more for, I don't know if you're thinking the same thing.
it may be,
It was something, general, out of Lancaster, he did that.
but it wasn't for the
Bill
solar.
Spratt,
We-
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Spratt.
Yep.
Yes, that's exactly, is that what we're thinking of? I don't know.
I don't know, I just remember reading something about it, but I don't know if they went through with it or if it was
Same
a,
thing? No. okay.
No, it was a study.
Something like that, right?
No, it was a comprehensive
more
study on
power
energy
and-
efficiencies. and-
yeah, I just didn't want to do something all over again that we did,
They were gonna put the panels in that magical spot in the elementary school playground. That
Was
you-
it?
that you were-
Welcome to open mic night.
All right, here we go.
Hey,
definitely-
the only thing, and Ed brought it up, I can't believe, but the landfill, and I know the town probably won't hit the mark, but I thought about 5 years from now, that was, the proposal was that was gonna power the majority of the town buildings. 'Cause I think there's, what, 8, 9 acres of a solar farm up there. And, I don't know if they'll dedicate it in the 5-year time, but if we sign a 20-year contract, and then, 6 years from now, and I don't know if Chris McGowan will be the guy that could answer it. I'm not against this. I just want to make
No.
sure that we don't get tied in
Right.
a long-term deal and then find out the town is going to provide,
And I don't know exactly what, I mean, they're signing on for the DPW, and I know Chris
Yeah.
McGowan was behind
Well,
that.
that's why
for
after
the
you brought that,
DPW
maybe
so
they
I
don't-
don't know if,
Yeah, maybe they won't make that.
they're looking at the energy usage. And like we said, you're really talking that, let's say one of our buildings is feasible. Let's say we figured out that we could do a project on the high school. Well, you're talking about 20% of our energy load.
Okay.
It's not, that's not even, but that is that'll be a substantial savings. So, the only building I'm a little hesitant on, I think, would be this building. It is a smaller building as far as usable roof space. And so it'd be less savings. And it is also, while it's a newer roof, it's still a 17-year-old roof, which means by the end of the project, it would be a 37-year-old roof. So this one, I feel like, could be a little bit of a gray area. And I do feel like there would be people who would want to question, the aesthetics of it in the downtown area. Technically, I think we're still in a historical district here, in Clinton's historical district. So I know the fire station's included in that, so I'm assuming we're lumped in it. So I was, we could maybe just do the 2 sites. We could do the letter of intent for the high school and the middle school, see what it comes back. And I think I would almost predict that both of them are probably not feasible in their current state, but just give us some data of what would it take to make them feasible, and is it something we could negotiate with them and figure out a way to still pull the project off. So if you want to move forward, I would maybe say just recommend let's do the middle school and high school now, and if not, then we can just wait and let the director of facilities look into it. So it's the board's, it's your decision. I'm fine either way, but I think it's, just looking at, if we do something now, we'd probably see, hopefully, if it is feasible and we can get going, we'd realize those savings sooner, and maybe we'd know and be able to factor that into like next year's budget cycle and those types of things.
So I'd like to make a motion for a letter of intent for the high school and middle school.
Is there
I'll
a
second that.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor of entering into a letter of intent for the Clinton Middle School and Clinton High School with Solect, say aye. In favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll let my, Mr. Ward and Select know tomorrow, and then I think we're going to get ready to move forward with them because they are, like I said, the Selectmen already took their vote, so they're waiting for the results of our meeting tonight. I had on here at the fire station, I know, Eddie, I know you wanted to make sure that we kept this going, and we try to work on figuring out what our next steps for the fire station are. I know at one point we talked about forming a subcommittee or something, or maybe even meeting with the town about some of their requirements to utilize it again. I don't know, I guess in my mind, I'm still sort of trying to process everything to start trying to determine a need and make sure that if we're going to, before we put a master plan together, that we make sure it's in the right direction. But I also appreciate that, that it's been sort of a stagnant thing for 20 years that we need to kind of get moving on. So I don't know if there are next steps that you want to start taking at this point, or if there are suggestions.
Suggestion, maybe that we put on the docket to, do the space assessment first, figure out what our needs are, and then establish the next step as far as the fire station. Because I think that's the question that's always going to keep coming up is, what are our needs? Because we want to take care of our needs first, make sure we utilize it to the best of our ability, and to be able to go into a committee with educated answers to where we go next, I think we need that space assessment first.
Other thoughts?
I'm fine with doing that. I feel like, I haven't really heard anything about the usage of that fire station, and then I feel like Mr. Morrison and some other people, Mr. Duffy, came and presented, I thought was a viable option. And now we didn't really have much talk about what are we doing with that space before. And I kind of thought we were moving in that direction. And I'm fine with taking a step back, but as long as it's not like a step back forever, as long as we have timetables and deadlines and some clear ideas of, if we don't move forward with the makerspace, what do we really want to do with it? That's all.
Is it possible to look at, both potentials in terms of, some type of pilot program that's ready to go while we're assessing the space, using that experience with a group to also gauge what other needs we might have? I don't know if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think the two things that we might need to do, I think we can keep working on a space assessment, and I think that I can even probably at least share some maybe very preliminary overview kind of data when I do my entry plan findings, which I think are scheduled for 2 weeks from now. So, but I can try to at least touch on that a little bit in terms of, at least looking at kind of what our square footage in each building is, what that looks like for enrollment, what it looks like for different programs, so we can kind of get some preliminary stuff on that. The other big question that I think is, and I think maybe I just need to work directly with the town on this, is to get, whether it's the building inspector, whoever, down into that building and say, if I wanted an occupancy permit right now,
what would it take?
What would it take? And I think that it goes to your question, Joel, and I think even Eddie, it goes to the, I think you could turn that first floor into an awesome makerspace, first practice field, all that kind of stuff, without a huge financial cost, unless things like, oh, you need to have sprinklers, oh, you need to, drill through the floor and put a stairwell so you can get out that back exit because you can't touch the shell of the building, but you need a second exit. There's a lot of different, those types of little questions that I think just need to be answered, because that's going to give us more direction of, what it's going to take to get that, an occupancy certificate is going to let us know maybe the scope of what we're looking at as well. And I think that'll help us set some of the deadlines. So I'll reach out to the about the occupancy permit. I can do that tomorrow or the next day, just to try to schedule an appointment to maybe walk through and say, can you just let's pretend I want an occupancy permit. What are you gonna cite me for here? And that way, that'll get us some data for that too.
Okay, and unless there's any objections, I would just recommend, can we just keep the fire station update on the agenda moving forward?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So, I thought when, his name was Mr. Duffy, right?
Mhm.
Isn't it something he was supposed to be looking into some help with, by the state with a grant or something like that?
Yeah, but we missed that deadline for that initial grant. But he does have some drawings, so I'll reach out with Phil too and see what he's looked into, because he would be aware of a lot of that stuff, and then that way we can at least make sure that we're not, just losing all that work and the drawings and the things like that he put together. So I do think it's something that we want to keep pursuing, and we want to make sure that becomes a space. It's a really neat building. It's a great location, and I think the fact that it's like a ghost town right now is not efficient. So
and I think it's important to get that building online somehow.
Right.
It's just a matter of, as far as proximity, as far as what our needs are, if there's a need at the elementary and it's right next door, I'm just saying,
Yep.
in theory, that, just take a look at all of our needs so that, we're able to address all those and then say, okay, this is what we have coming up in the next few years, and this is the most cost-effective plan for us.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. All right, and what I think Eddie will just leave it on as, I'll leave it on there, kind of under the facilities updates, and we'll just kind of stay on it each week for now. So programming updates, that Innovation Zone application and financing. If you remember, that was the Footsteps to Brilliance. I was at a meeting with the FLAC superintendent meeting when we were talking about the different school districts that are planning on joining. I asked a lot of questions about the financing. Really, there's not really any way to avoid financing with that company that's doing the financing, because that's who the United Way is financing through.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be our matching contribution. So regardless, we're going to have some sort of loan with them that, if nothing else, the United Way would come in and do it. One thing they said is that they are that financing has been secured, which can be a little tricky because a lot of banks don't necessarily finance intellectual property at a very reasonable rate. Like software is not necessarily it's not a building you can easily repossess. So it's a little, it can be a little bit trickier in a financing type of a world. So I think that for the small amount that the interest would be over the 5 years, I would recommend, when you look at really our portion of that interest, I think I'd recommend, just for the ease of sort of making this all work with the United Way and their funding, I would recommend that we, if we want to move forward, we use that financing. I did fill out the application to United Way saying that we want to move forward with this. We're still not fully committed. I mean, I had to do that. I don't know where you all stand right now. I think this is a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to work with our fellow communities to do really something that's bigger than just the schools and trying to provide a resource to the whole community. And I think that it's something that we can build into our elementary grades. It can be stuff we use during the WIN block, that we just heard about. So, I think it's a good opportunity. I think in the long run, it's very short money when you're looking at the potential that our liability is. And so I'd recommend that we move forward with the actual financing. And we don't need a vote necessarily on that tonight, because I will, if you guys are in favor of that, I will bring the actual the financing agreement and the motion language that's needed to accept that to the next meeting. Just want to know, but at this point, if everyone's on, just kind of a confirmation you guys are okay with me proceeding with that.
Okay, I actually looked back in some of the success they've had. I think, in fact, I was familiar with 2 of the school districts in California that they've had success with. I think Fitchburg was another one.
Yeah.
So, I'm in favor of bringing it back. I don't know if we can vote tonight. If not, we can wait. But yeah, I think everything I've looked on it and talking to people, I think it's a great program. So yeah, I'm in favor of it. So if you can bring it, I'm good.
All right, so as long as I know I have your guys' support, then what I'll do is I'll get the financing, all the financing information I can get, I'll get that in your packet for the next meeting, and I'll also make sure that I've scripted the formal language we need, just to make sure that our motion is correct, and we can go ahead and vote it formally next meeting. Okay?
Good.
Thank you for all of the follow-up on it.
No problem. Leominster CTE discussion. So this is very preliminary discussion. It's actually at the same FLAC meeting I was at. Jim Jolliker, the superintendent of Leominster, is the chair of that board, and I was talking to him about their career and technical education innovation school, and talking about a little bit, I don't know if people know, I think there was an article in the item about it, that West Boylston recently signed on to use send their vocational students to Leominster instead of Assabet. So now freshmen that sign up would be going to Leominster. The difference in tuition is fairly substantial. You're talking probably, just to round up, you're talking a little over $16,000 a student plus transportation for Assabet. You're looking at, I think it's under $11,000 a student at Leominster. So you're talking about, at a minimum, a conservative figure of $5,000 a kid that you would save. Well, you figure we have 100 kids that go to Assabet, basically. So you're talking about over 4 years, you could be looking at, after it's phased in over 4 years, you could be looking at potential savings of $500,000. So, that's significant. But I do think we need to balance that, and we need to make sure that we're looking at the quality of programs and the number of options that they have, and looking into that. So, at this point, I have a meeting tomorrow with the superintendent for Leominster and their CTE principal at tomorrow at 1:30, and that's where we'll start sort of that exploratory process to just kind of see, what are their offerings, how do those match up to Assabet. I know for your Perkins plans and those types of things, you have to have measurable outcomes. I mean, we can dig into whatever we want to dig into to try to make sure that, we're, as much as it can seem that, Assabet seems to cost the school a lot of money, we still want to make sure we're providing a quality program for the students in this town. So, it's a delicate thing, but we need to, look at it a little. I think it's worth exploring, and we can see where we want to go from there. There was one other little point I was thinking about, and now I'm not going to remember it. But, so I just wanted to let you know, in case you hear anything, that's, oh, I know what it was. Just to clarify, I know some people, we're not a member town of Assabet, okay? So if you're a member town of Assabet, then your town directly receives an assessment from Assabet, and the town pays, and you get so many slots, and your assessment includes what they need for their operating budget. We simply pay tuition. We're a tuition member. So whatever kid goes, we get a bill. So because of that, we do have the option to us, much like West Boylston had, to explore either our own programs or utilizing a different provider of programs. So, that's all this is right now. It's just sort of exploring that. When you look on paper and you say, wow, in 4 years from now, I could be saving $500,000. That seems like it's something worth exploring, but we'll see as we go down that path.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that was something that I was just going to ask. We're not a member of Assabet, and I know from reading the article about West Boylston, that was kind of their deciding factor as far as going with Leominster, because Assabet was not willing to make an arrangement with them. Can we explore Assabet to see if they're willing to make us a member of their system?
We can see how that would...
And then also, I think the next closest program that is become very reputable is Monty Tech. If we can explore where, what the options are over there as well.
I mean, I could reach out to Monty Tech, but...
And Worcester.
Worcester, yeah.
Worcester's probably not that much further than Monty Tech from here.
Yeah, I just don't, I know Monty Tech is bursting at the seams, so I don't know what they're taking, but yeah.
I understand what you're saying,
Yep.
and all I'm saying is, right now, we're in exploratory.
Yep.
And so all I'm saying is, to do our...
Due diligence.
Due diligence as far as our homework on this, if we could
Yeah.
just look at our surrounding tech vocational schools and see where the feedback is from all of them, and then we have all that information when we come to the table to make an educated decision.
So I might be able to draft maybe a letter requesting some information on exploring becoming a member, or what their tuition in options would be, and I could try to send it to like a Monty Tech, Worcester,
Minuteman's probably too far.
Yeah, but and Assabet for the joining, and we can kind of look at that and see how it goes.
And then as we move forward, we'll be able to look at, for example, what Assabet has versus what Leominster has, so we know what we're missing out with.
So we can just kind of shop around and see what makes most sense, and if Assabet is the best choice, then that's fine, and I have nothing against Assabet. I think I've only heard good things about their programs. I just think it's doing our due diligence just to kind of make sure that we're spending our money wisely.
No, and thank you for bringing it up.
One question. If we switch vocational providers, what happens to the students that are already attending Assabet? So if you've been going to Assabet for 3 years and then we switch.
Typically what's going to happen in that is you're not going to do anything to negatively impact a student. So if a kid's already enrolled in Assabet, they're going to stay in Assabet. So that it would be something like, even if we were going to say tomorrow we're going with Leominster for this year, it would be freshmen would go there, sophomores, juniors, seniors would stay there, and then it would just kind of phase in over 4 years.
Okay.
At least, and that's how West Boylston did it too, So the last one of the programming updates was just early college consultants. I know I had shared an early college consultant proposal with you at the last meeting, and kind of also started talking a little about the Perkins, possibly them working with us on a Perkins plan as well. Right now, we've kind of pushed that off a little bit, and try to kind of meet with some local colleges independently just to sort of see what other programs are out there, because really with the push from the state on some of these early college pathways, there are other programs that already exist that we don't necessarily need to pay a lot of money to a consultant to recreate the wheel. So like even today, I met with Quinsigamond Community College today. They have programs in Assabet, Hudson, Marlboro, and Worcester, and they're really focusing on mass transferable credit, which is their credits issued by Quinsigamond Community College, but they're going to be recognized by any Massachusetts State University. It doesn't matter if it's UMass Amherst, Fitchburg State, Worcester State, wherever. They're going to be recognized as credits. There's different options with that. Some work on just those. What they normally do is sort of for your kids that are just ready to really challenge themselves and try to get going. They can work on those core courses that are trying to get some of those credits under their belt that are going to be transferable. Then there's other options you can explore that even might lead into more of like vocational areas, different things such as early education, information technology, manufacturing, healthcare, that we can look at and getting them some courses. So the vision would be most of these programs work on the goal of getting kids 12 credits while they're in high school. One course each semester their junior year, one course each semester their senior year. And then because some of these models, because they work on the college schedule, you have sort of that dead time, when college courses end before the next semester starts, that they've even tried to build in some of the career exploration type stuff, job shadowing, those types of things. Or even sometimes intercession options for kids that are really motivated to kind of get some stuff done. So I did meet with them today, so I was excited to hear about some of those programs. There actually is a meeting on Thursday at Hudson, and Mr. Hastings is going to go to learn about the, what was that program called? Do you remember? Future Steps? Yes. And try to see that. And a lot of that one's actually offered online too, and that's something that we could get, if we thought it worked for us, we could get up and even this second semester this year. I also have meetings scheduled on October 2nd. One is with Mount Wachusett Community College with the same department to kind of talk about what their partnerships are. I know they've done some partnering with NIPRO, kind of see where that goes. I know they have their manufacturing center in Devens, so that might be something we could potentially explore a partnership there. I also have a meeting on October 2nd at WPI, just to kind of talk. I don't even know if it's necessarily the right person. It was the dean I knew I could talk to that I'm going to try to talk to kind of see what we can, how I can maybe navigate the WPI system to see what options there are there. And also on that agenda is to try to start gauging who the right person would be to talk to if WPI had any sort of fire station interest.
Right.
If that was going to be something like, if that was going to be more of like that makerspace, maybe, whatever. But we'll see. That's, like I said, I'm not even sure it's the right dean yet. It's just the dean I knew I could call. So anyway, so we're trying to work on those early college programs, and I think there's a chance we might even be able to. We had our AP scholar with distinction that, we're trying to make sure we challenge him. He might be a great pilot for us this spring with some of these college courses, and we see how they work. So, all right.
Okay.
I think that was it for me.
Okay. Mine will not be that long. And so I'll start with the mea culpa that I'd like us to kind of put off the MASBO discussion just because I had promised to send you copies of reports that had been done, and that email is still in my draft inbox, so I apologize for that. We have a list of subcommittees that the superintendent's office has put into a spreadsheet for us. There are policies and procedures, which we may or may not have a report on tonight. That is a full subcommittee. We have community scholarship, we have curriculum and instruction, facilities, negotiations, and safety. And Mr. Bailey, you had asked you were willing to serve on that one as well?
Sure.
Safety?
Absolutely.
And so if we want to fill this out now, we certainly can. If you want to look it over and, let Mary know your interest, we will, build that out. You've been on the community scholarship in the past. Would you like to continue
Yes.
with that? Okay. And would anyone else like to be part of the community scholarship subcommittee?
I think there's always
Do we only-
one,
There's-
usually there's
It's
just
a one person, okay.
I think there's
All
just
right.
one.
Never mind. And negotiations.
I would like to be a part of that.
Yeah, I will too, Joe.
Okay.
It's such a blast the last time.
Yep.
Who was that? That was, Mike, did you say you wanted?
Mr. McIntyre and Mr. Bailey.
I wouldn't mind working with Ed on the marketing committee.
Terrific. That leaves one spot left on safety, and I'm happy to do it unless someone else wants to. Okay. Mr. Bailey, Mr. Bates on safety committee. So we have a full set of subcommittees, and
There were a couple other questions on that bottom page, which
Yeah.
just things to think about, and we don't need to act on those right now, but, one was, do we want to have a standing facilities committee? So, I know we had one for the director search, a kind of facilities director search, but do we want someone that, a subcommittee that always is, like, in charge of facilities? And I don't know, we can see, maybe that's something to wait and see till the director comes on and see how we interact with them, and if that's something that seems useful, because that might be, now we have sort of that subcommittee designation that can go if the facilities director needs to meet with us. Then I even said, like, the safety and facilities, that could potentially even just be one subcommittee in itself, because so much of that's going to be an overlap. And then do we want a budget subcommittee, which I don't know if we need it or not. In Athol, I had a 10-person school committee. So a 10-person school committee is not very mobile. So we always had a budget subcommittee so we could meet regularly. But I feel like, we meet every 2 weeks as opposed to monthly. And I think all of you definitely want to be kept informed of the budget. So we don't necessarily need that, but just something to think. If we see that, things are, we think it's beneficial, I think we can always examine it.
So just think about those other aspects. Do we have any reports from either the marketing subcommittee or our policy subcommittee?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
The other thing about the policy is I just want to, Mary did a ton of work, and the policy subcommittee members got these two nice binders. One of those binders is our existing policies that were on that MASBO list, and one of those binders is the MASC policy, or the MASC list, sorry. So one's ours, one's the MASC. So that's really kind of our scope of work for now, is to start looking at binder 1 and binder 2 and seeing which ones we want to go with. So you don't have to do it today, but Mary did a great job putting that together. I want to make sure we recognize her for that, and you do have some light reading.
I was hoping one was for me and one was for Mike.
No, Mike got his.
Double the work.
And again, thank you both
Yeah.
for your willingness to do this vitally important work.
Abusing your authority.
For a school district. You had every right to say no. And Mary, thank you. Thank you very much for everything that you do. Is there any old business? Any new business?
Can I share 2 donation letters with you?
Well, of course.
So one's a donation, I don't know if we voted to accept it, and that's another policy I think we should revisit, is what you have to accept and what not, because typically there's a threshold there. But I wrote this letter to Ed Davidson, and he sort of said, I'm writing this letter to thank you for all that you've done for the Clinton community. As an educator at CHS, as a driving instructor, you played a big part in helping to shape the future of many Clinton students. As you recently closed the driving school, I also want to thank you for being a good tenant in the 150 School Street building. Furthermore, I want to thank you for the items that you donated to the school department. Specifically, these items include 7 folding tables, 16 chairs, 1 window air conditioner, 1 whiteboard. Thank you again for your generous donations and your contributions to the students of Clinton. I wish you well in your future endeavors. So we sent that letter. We also had Ms. Crosman, what's her first name? What is it? Jane Ann. Jane Ann Crossman came in, And they ran they used to run a softball league that they now no longer run, a softball team. They were closing out their account. They got like the notice from Clinton Savings Bank, you've got a dormant account. They had $79.58 left in it, so they made a donation to the athletic department. So I just wrote her a letter, thank you for donating $79.58 to the Clinton Public Schools Athletic Department. I'm glad that you felt supported by the school district when you were running your softball league, and we appreciate you thinking of us as you were wrapping up your former league's finances. Your generous donation will be earmarked for the Clinton Public Schools Athletic Department so it can help us continue to support our student athletes. Just wanted to share that with you. All right.
That brings us to the end of our meeting. Was there anything else?
I was just going to make a motion that we adjourn.
I do want to say once again, thank you to Mr. Rulo and Dr. Meyer for hosting us, and also for setting up the moving ceremony this morning, dedicating the bench. And yes, Dr. Meyer.
Before we formally adjourn, there was one last thing in your packet I didn't talk on. Remember, I did do the parent guardian community member survey. I did end up with about almost 90 responses. I think it was like 87. There were about, I think it was 30-something people that said that I could contact them for further, further conversations. So I've scheduled 2 focus groups. One is on September 27th at 6:30. One's on September 29th at 9 a.m. I think we have about 6 people or so for each group now. We sent the invitation out to them. We're getting them back. And what I've done is I've coded all the responses from that survey, so I kind of have the snapshot summaries of the data. And my goal is with the focus groups to kind of drill down in those and try to make sure that they feel at least we've captured it, or if we can explore any of those concepts deeper.
Great.
Sorry, I forgot all about it.
What were the focus dates again? I'm sorry.
It's on the letter, it's the last letter in your packet.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, all right, thank you.
You were about to make a motion.
I thought I made it.
Second.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
So moved. Thank you, everyone.
That's how you got me on the policy and procedure, because